May we, the councillors of Ku-ring-gai, always be aware that decisions we make affect the daily lives of those we represent. May we make these decisions with knowledge and goodwill, respecting the views of others, and may we show ourselves worthy to follow in the footsteps of those who have protected the special qualities of Ku-ring-gai for over 100 years. Amen. On behalf of Council, I recognise the traditional custodians of the land, the Ku-ring-gai people on whose land we meet. I would like to outline a few points regarding this evening's proceedings. Tonight's meeting will be live streamed on the Council website at www.kmc.nsw.gov.au/livestream. Only councillors and council staff will be shown on the camera. The webcast of the meeting will remain on the website until the minutes of the meeting are formally adopted by Council. The webcast commences once the Mayor is seated and will cease if Council goes into a confidential session where the public and the press are excluded, pursuant to Section 10A of the Local Government Act. Council meetings remain open to the public as observers, but in line with the Code of Meeting Practice, speakers will now address the Council through the monthly public forums and not at Council meetings. For more information about addressing Council, please visit our website at www.kmc.nsw.gov.au. All present tonight must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the Council's Code of Conduct, or making other potentially defamatory statements. Councillors and Council staff must declare and manage any conflicts of interest they may have in relation to any item of business that is the subject of the meeting agenda this evening. Councillors, are there any apologies? It appears everybody is here. General Manager, are there any staff apologies?
There are none, Madam Mayor.
Councillors, are there any declarations of interest? None. General Manager, are there any staff declarations?
None from the staff, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. General Manager, would you please list reports to be considered in closed session?
Madam Mayor and Councillors, we have one report and a number of attachments to reports. Item C1, Ku-ring-gai Hornsby Meals on Wheels Services. Item GB14, Ku-ring-gai Creative Arts Facilities Options Paper, Public Submissions, Attachment A1. Item GB19, Memorial Club Roseville Draft Voluntary Planning Agreement Exhibition, Attachment A3. GB21, RFT 12/2019, North Turramurra Golf Course Professional Management Services, Attachment 1 and 2. GB22, RFT 13/2019, Processing and Marketing of Recyclables, Attachments A1 and A2. Also noting a late memorandum from the Director Operations, titled Proposed Tender Amendment, Processing and Marketing of Recyclable Products. GB23, RFT 14/2019, Processing and Marketing of Vegetation Waste, Attachments A1 and A2. And GB24, RFT 15/2019, Gordon Recreation Ground Playground Upgrade, Attachment A1.
Thank you, Councillors. I seek a motion that those materials remain in confidential. Moved Councillor Greenfield, seconded Councillor Chateau. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
General Manager.
Apologies, councillors. Just for the record, in attachment to in relation to GB24, it was actually attachments A1 and 2.
Thank you. General Manager, documents circulated to councillors.
Just the light greens, councillors, which have two items. The memo in relation to GB22 that I just alluded to, together with a memo from the Manager Governance and Corporate Strategy of today's date in relation to PT3, petition to keep natural grass at Mimosa Oval, additional signatures.
Councillors, I seek a motion for confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on the 17th of September 2019. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Greenfield. All those in favour? That is unanimous. There are no mayoral minutes this evening. Petitions, and we have 3. Would somebody like to move the first petition, PT1, petition for pedestrian and vehicular traffic changes? Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Chateau. That is that the petition be received and referred to the appropriate officer. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? That is carried. We move to PT2, petition for no parking zone to be extended on the south side of Kitchener Street, St Ives, outside numbers 16, 18 and 20, and the no parking sign be extended on the north side of Kitchener Street in front of numbers 11 and 15. Is there a mover for that petition? Moved Councillor Kay, that the petition be received and referred to the appropriate officer. Seconded Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous. We move to PT3, petition to keep natural grass at Mimosa Oval. Moved Councillor Pettit and seconded Councillor Clark. That the petition be received and referred to the appropriate officer for attention. I will put that now. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Are there any other petitions? None. We move to general business, and I invite councillors to nominate any item on the agenda that they wish to have a site inspection. Councillor Nye? No. None. I invite councillors to nominate any item on the agenda that you wish to adopt in accordance with the officer's recommendation, allowing for minor changes without debate. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Regarding GB5 Council's annual programme of conferences, I note that we're in the middle of a drought and Warrgamut Dam is low, so I'd like to add the LG-NSW Water Management Conference to Table A of GB5. So LG-NSW Water Management Conference. Anticipated month of conference, September.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded Councillor Clark. Is there any debate on this matter? Councillor Kay.
There's just a spelling mistake. It's ALGWA, Australian Local Government Women's Association. If we can just amend that, please.
Thank you for that correction. So moved and Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at the recent minutes relating to the...
Sorry, can I just clarify, are you wishing to debate this?
Yes. Sorry.
We can only deal with matters that aren't going to involve debate now, so Councillor Nye will have to move on past GB5 and save that for later debate. Sorry, Councillor Greenfield. Councillor Nye, were there others that you would... No. Councillors, are there any other items on the agenda? Yes, Councillor Clark, that you wish to adopt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, well, let's start working through this. We've got a few of them. All right, so I'd like to start with GB1, Delegation of Authority, Mayor for the 2019-2020 mayoral term, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you.
All right, GB2, Delegation of Authority for the Deputy Mayor for 2019-2020 term, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded Councillor Greenfield. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
Thank you. GB3, Disclosures of Interest Returns Register 2018-2019, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Shadow. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. GB4, Election of Chairpersons and Deputy Chairpersons for Referee and Advisory Committees for the 2019-2020 mayoral term, NESROC appointment of a second alternative delegate. I'd like that Councillor Christine Kay be that second alternate delegate and with the rest as the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Nye. Councillor Kay, do you accept that nomination? Yes. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you.
All right, GB5 was withdrawn. GB6, minutes of the Audit and Risk Improvement Committee. Minutes held on the 27th of June 2019 and the 12th of September. The officer's recommendation, the council receives and notes this report.
That is seconded by Councillor Greenfield. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
Thank you. GB7, Audited General and Special Purpose Financial Statements for the year ends 30 June 2019. The officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I suggest that I don't read out the full title and just say the start of GB8, etc., rather than reading out the full title? It just seems like it's going to take a while otherwise. GB8, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Greenfield. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB9, the officer's recommendation.
Investment report, seconded by Councillor Kelly. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB10, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Greenfield. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB11, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB12, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB13, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB14, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB15, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB16, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous, I think. Yes, unanimous.
GB17, the officer's recommendation. Fine committee.
Seconded by Councillor Nye. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB18, the officer's recommendation.
That is seconded by Councillor Kelly. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
I'll leave GB19 just for now because I believe there's an amendment that wants to be discussed. GB20, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Kelly. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB21, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Smith. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB22, using the alternative suggestion as per the memo,
So,
late memorandum.
yes, the later memo. Seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
GB23, the officer's recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Kelly. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
And GB24, the officer's recommendation.
That is seconded by Councillor Chatto. All those in favour? That is unanimous.
Thank you. I believe that just leaves us with GB19 and NM1. And
Correct.
I'll leave it at that.
Yes, and C1.
Oh, yes, of course. Apologies. I would also like them to move C1, the officer's recommendation. Yes, getting beyond myself.
We are on C1.
Yes.
Seconded by Councillor Pettit. All those in favour? That is unanimous. So that takes us back to G5, Council's annual program of conferences, and I seek a motion. Councillor Chatto.
Madam Mayor, I was going to move NM1.
Oh, sorry, we're on GB5.
Oh, are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, although, sorry, are you wanting to go back and move that
Yes,
as
I am.
without debate?
Yes.
you may do so.
Withdrawn.
Withdrawn. Councillor Spencer. So we are back at GB5, which is the Council's annual program of conferences. Councillor Shadow, have you still got your light on for this one? No. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move it as printed, but with the addition of the LGNSW Water Management Conference in September and the correction of ALGWA, which we previously discussed.
Thank you.
I've got an addition to ALGWA because they also have a New South Wales conference, which is in March. So they have a national and a New South Wales. Is it possible for me to add that?
And I'm happy to incorporate that.
Thank you. So is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Spencer. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll keep this short. The LG NSW offers a number of conferences and summits. The LG NSW Water Management Conference is in the second year of its running. So traditionally, we haven't, as councillors, been attending it because it previously did not exist. Now, we are in the middle of a drought at the moment. The latest drought started in 2017. It's been 2 years already. The regions are getting hit the hardest. In our metro areas, most of our dams are below 50% as well. I do believe that water management will increasingly become an important issue for us as councillors to consider and to incorporate in the way that we come up with our strategies. So that is why I would like to add LGNSW Water Management Conference to the table as well. I also support the various additions mentioned by Councillor Kay. Thank you.
As seconder, Councillor Spencer. Is there other debate on this? Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking at the papers from last year's Water Management Conference, it seems to focus largely on the country and rural areas more so than the metropolitan areas. So I'm not sure how relevant it's going to be to us at this point in time, because it's not really focusing on things that would assist us. I'm happy with Councillor Kay's suggestion, but I'm not confident that the water management, we're going to get a huge amount of benefit out of attending that at this time.
I might follow that up with a question to the staff. The staff aware of where this conference is held and whether there is a strong metropolitan focus? Director Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 2018, the conference was held in Armidale, and in 2019, it was recently held in Albury. Just perusing the program from this year, I think it probably is the case that a large proportion of the agenda is focused on country councils because they often provide water and sewerage services. However, there are agenda items that deal with water management in general, so I think it's fair to say that it would be suitable for both metro and country councils.
And do our staff attend this conference regularly? Director Watson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, as was pointed out by Councillor Nye, it's only a new conference, so I don't know that my staff have attended, but we are certainly involved in the Cooperative Research Centre for Water Sensitive Cities, so it's an issue that is very close to the hearts of many of my staff. If the agenda was appropriate, I'm sure they would go, if not contribute.
Would there be an opportunity, either Councillor Nye may know or staff, would there be an opportunity to influence the conference agenda to try and ensure that there was some relevant metropolitan focus. Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor, as councillors would be aware, we have a number of sewer mining projects and water saving programs of our own, so I'm sure it's something that the staff could contribute depending on the particular focus of each conference.
All right. Is there any other debate on this matter? Councillor Shadow.
Look, I appreciate very much where Councillor Nye is coming from, but I'm just thinking there are a number of other conferences that councillors can put their hands up to go to at any time. And I think what we've got here in the list, they're all local government conferences. And it seems to me that, unless I'm mistaken, the New South Wales Water Conference is not a local government conference. It is a local government conference. Oh well, in that case.
If there's no further debate, Councillor Nye, do you wish to sum up, please?
Thank you very much. I don't have anything further to... Oh, I'd just like to add that I have met up with several metro and regional councillors on this issue in recent months, and I do believe it's a topic that is going to be increasingly relevant to us as councillors in the years going forward. Thank you.
I will now put that motion. We only have one motion on the table. All those in favour? That is Councillors Nye, Clark, Pettit. That's unanimous. Thank you. We move to 19. GB 19, which is the Memorial Club Roseville Draft Voluntary Planning Agreement Exhibition. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move the officer's recommendation, but with an additional point at the end. So point E, that closer to the potential time of sale, Council commissions its own independent valuation of the parcel of land.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded, Councillor Spencer. Is Councillor Nye, do you wish to speak to that motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'll keep this short as well. What we see, what the public sees in attachment A1 of GB19 is that there's a potential valuation of $225,000 for this 156.8 square metre parcel of land. Now, I've just tested it with various residents. How much do you think such a parcel of land could potentially be worth? And every time I ask, people think it could be worth a bit more than just 225. Now, I understand that there are some other residents who want to just delay the whole process, but personally I believe that we are not voting today to sell that land. We are not voting today on we're not agreeing on a particular value. I believe that if this does go to public exhibition, residents will have the opportunity to comment on the value of land as well as a number of other things. So just to speed up the process, just so that we can start the public exhibition process now, I'm just adding this extra point that closer to the time of sale, if there is one, that we do have an independent valuation of the parcel of land rather than just one in attachment A3 that's commissioned by the developer.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer is seconded. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you. I've not really that much to add, except the wording, whether it is in the correct order. For instance, in the first few words there, closer to the potential time of sale, I was wondering if the wording could be written more properly. Like, for instance, closer to the time of sale, we have not determined when we're going to sell it, that's one. And second, we should be getting an evaluation prior to making a decision on to whether to sell or not. And I note the second half of that sentence, that's good. It is good governance to have an independent valuation done. No issue there. But just about the wording in the first half, Thank you.
Councillor Nye.
Just to clarify, Councillor Spencer, do you have any proposed wording instead? When I say potential time of sale, it anticipates that it might not happen.
I understand that. I did observe the word potential. I'm just thinking aloud here. Perhaps if Director Marshall could assist that.
The General Manager suggesting Director Watson.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Part C of the recommendation contemplates a report being back to Council. You might tie the valuation report back to the timing of the report back to Council at Part C.
I'm sorry, could you just clarify again? So, do we have E or?
Recommendation C talks about a report back to Council at the end of exhibition. We could bring back a valuation at the same time as we report back on submissions at Part
yes.
C. So, you know, the words would be that the report contemplated in Part C above include independent valuation of the land. Or
and would Councillor and I put in those words?
Yes, I'm happy to incorporate that as the new pointee. Just to clarify, include a council commissioned independent valuation of the parcel of land. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question first. Councillor Clark is next, though, after that. Director Watson, staff were contemplating an independent report close to that time?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Regardless of this motion, that is what the staff were going to undertake.
This makes it abundantly clear. It's contemplated in the confidential attachment, but this certainly makes it clear to the public.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe you took the words out of my mouth.
I'm
I was going to
sorry.
ask a question through you to the relevant director. If in this type of process, if we would typically seek an independent valuation for a sale of council land before obviously we sell it.
And I think the director has answered that, but thank you very much. Are there any further speakers on this item? If not, Councillor Nye, do you wish to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think point E is important because although it is stating a process that we would have done anyway, it's just reassuring any residents who otherwise would have thought something weird was going on. So although it's what we would have done anyway, I think it's important to include in this particular case. Thanks.
All those in favour? That is unanimous. That leaves us with any, extra reports circulated to the meeting. General
There are none,
Manager.
Madam Mayor.
No extra reports. We move to NM1, Sydney North Planning Panel, SNPP. Is there a mover for that notice of motion? Councillor Chatto.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move NM1.
As printed.
As printed, thank you.
Is there a seconder for NM1? Seconded, Councillor Smith. Councillor Chatto, do you wish to speak to that?
I reserve my right at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Smith has seconded. Do you wish to speak?
Madam Mayor, I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move an alternate motion. Can I do that?
Amendment.
An amendment.
Yes.
Well, a very long amendment. We'll pull up the wording now. So we have a file on the computer. Password is NM1. Okay, I move that Council thanks Councillors Chatto and Smith for their enthusiasm in serving on the Sydney North Planning Panel SNPP. B, Council acknowledges that the appointment of Councillors Spencer and Nye to the SNPP by resolution of Council dated 10th of October 2017 was consistent with the State Government's Planning Panel's operational procedures, page 9, which states that 2 council members are appointed by each council, at least one is required to have expertise in one or more of the following areas: planning, architecture, heritage, environment, urban design, land economics, traffic and transport, law, engineering, or tourism. Councillors should reconsider if the nominations to the panels are appropriate within 12 months following council election. Point C, council acknowledges that while the termination of Councillor Spencer and Nye is permissible under the planning panel operational procedures, the procedure also states that generally, so as to ensure the greatest degree of continuity for the panels, councillors should consider appointing members for the maximum of 3 years provided for under the EPNA Act. Point D, Council understands the spirit of the planning panel operational procedures, which seeks to ensure that adequately qualified councillors are involved in the planning process and that there is continuity on the panel to minimise disruptions to the planning process. E, in order to respect the spirit of the planning panel operational procedures, Ku-ring-gai councillor membership on the SNPP is staggered. Staggering refers to a common corporate governance practice which involves board or committee positions expiring at different times in order to maximise continuity and minimise disruptions. Point F, Councillor Nye's appointment to the SNPP is terminated and Councillor Chateau is appointed to replace him for a term of 3 years, which is the maximum provided for under the EPNA Act. Councillor Nye is thanked for his 2 years of service and Councillor Chateau's term will finish October 2022. Point G, Councillor Spencer remains on the SNPP to complete a 3-year term, and following the September 2020 local government elections, another councillor will be appointed to replace him for a term of 3 years. Point H, the councillor members of SNPP will continue to be paid at the current rate established by Council Resolution dated 30 October 2018.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Seconded Councillor Spencer. Councillor Knight, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I do appreciate the enthusiasm shown by Councillors Smith and Councillors Chateau. I do also recognise that there is this intent by the state government that that you don't always switch around the panel members, because whenever you get rid of a planning panel member, there's a certain amount of knowledge that is lost. Even now, for example, the existing panel members have been briefed on 2 separate items which have yet to be determined. And so if you were to now then replace both panel members with 2 new ones, a lot of the knowledge has been gone, a lot of the opportunity to research has been gone. Now, in a lot of boards and lots of committees that we see, even our council's own boards and committees, committees only, we do see this practice where we do not kick everyone out all at the same time. What we do is we have some people join for a period of 2 or 3 years and then they move, and then other committee members are sort of offset or staggered at different points in time. And by doing this, we ensure that a good proportion of the committee or a good proportion of the panel always has a number of members who are aware of the issues, who have the relevant experience and are in a position to have an orderly transition of knowledge and orderly handover of sorts to the new members. So that is what I believe should be happening with this Sydney North Planning Panel. I did run this by some other councillor before, and they said it's very noble of you to step down after 2 years instead of 3. But I think I have learnt a lot from this planning panel process. I'd like to share the learnings with other people out there, but I don't believe that it's a good idea to shift large amounts of people in and out all at once. I believe that as a council, we should look towards staggering this, not just now, but having this practice in place going into the future. So Councillor Chateau in for the next 3 years. When we have the next election and when Councillor Spencer's term expires, Councillor Smith is more than welcome to be nominated for that position as well for a period of 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer, the seconder for the amendment.
Yes, I would like to thank Councillor Nye for putting in a lot of effort and thought in the amendment, and I do commend him for being noble, for stepping down, and for me to remain on the SMPP to carry on till the end of the term, which was recommended to be 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to speak very briefly against this amendment. I'm much more comfortable with a complete renewal of Council's representatives on the SNPP. We already are staggering this approach. The implication that we're removing all members of the SNPP is incorrect. There is a number of state-appointed members on the SNPP, so it is staggered. We're not losing and refreshing and having zero knowledge on the SNPP. So I would feel much more comfortable with complete renewal of the SNPP as we did with all other committees at a previous meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Spencer.
A bit of a clarification there. It is not a renewal, it is a termination. Thank you.
Noted. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak against the amendment. Thank you.
You may. Thank you. Councillor Clark, have you still got your light on for a reason? Sorry. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you,
Clark.
Madam Mayor. I'd like to move a procedural motion. I believe we've had 2 speakers for and 2 speakers against. 2 for was Councillor Nye and Councillor Spencer. Against was Councillor Clark and Councillor Greenfield.
That is correct. So I will seek a motion that we put the amendment. All those in favour? That is Councillors Nye, Clark, Spencer, Greenfield, Chatto, Smith, Kelly, Kay, Anderson. Against Councillor Pettit. I will now put the amendment, which is Councillor Nye's amendment. All those in favour? That is Councillors Nye, Pettit, Spencer, Kelly, Kay. Against? Councillor Clark, Greenfield, Chatto, Smith, Anderson. So that is an equal vote on that amendment. So I will cast my vote against the amendment. The amendment is therefore lost, and we move back to the original motion from Councillor Chatto. And we can resume debate. Is there a speaker, further speaker? Councillor Spencer.
A couple of questions, if I may.
Yes.
To the 2 candidates that were listed in this motion, could they list their formal qualifications, please? Thank you. Each of them.
Councillor Chatto and Councillor Smith, you may answer that question from Councillor Spencer if you wish.
Thank you, Madam. Yes, I believe only one of the 2 people needs to have those qualifications. And I have previously been on the panel, and in fact, when I was re-elected, I was not re-elected back onto it. So there was already a lack of continuity. I think as I was previously mayor and also previously on the panel, I think that's quite sufficient to say that I have that knowledge that is necessary. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, do you wish to respond?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I'm actually quite comfortable in being on the SMPP in relation to I've lived in Ku-ring-gai for quite a number of years. I've served as a councillor for 2 years, and I've actually been on the Heritage Committee as a deputy chair for the last 2 years, and I believe that that puts me in a position more than adequate in this position and feel that I've got Ku-ring-gai's interests at heart.
Thank you. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. The question was to ask about their formal qualifications, whether they have any that is recommended in the operations manual. I'm not really interested. The question is about formal qualifications, not their experience and so on. Thank you.
Well, the councillors have answered it in the way they see fit, but if they want to answer further, they may. No? Yes? Councillor Shadow.
Well, I was just going to point out, at least one is required to have expertise. It's not a formal qualification.
Thank you, Councillor Shadow. Councillor Spencer.
So to clarify, both of them don't have the formal qualifications that is suggested by the state. Whether that is
Point
correct.
of order,
Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Clark, point of order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe Councillor Spencer is stating that councillors negatively reflecting upon the councillors
no,
and,
that
their,
is not.
and their potential
That is wrong.
qualifications or abilities. By making this statement, they do not have the qualifications. I believe that is a negative attack against those councillors. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
It's incorrect because there is an operation manual, and they specifically state at least one councillor should have those qualifications. It is not to insult them or anything, not at all. I'm just asking for formal qualifications. And if they don't, say they don't. That's fine. It's not a point of order.
Point of order.
I believe that
Councillor
is a
Clark.
personal attack, which would be a point of order.
How can asking a qualification be an attack when it is specifically stated there? Again, it is not a point of order.
Well, Councillor Clark is believing that it's a slight against the councillors, that they've explained the expertise and relevant experience that they have. We note, Councillor Spencer, that you have a different opinion about the value of those statements, but those are the answers that the councillors have supplied. There are other speakers. Yes, Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. I accept the answers. Another question. Is this exercise for spite? I did ask that as well because apparently it appears that it is a termination when the tenure is not completed. And I do not believe in the last 2 years of my experience here that we have exercised such things, terminating people, from their committees and so on. So that's my question to them, whether it is an exercise of spite.
Who are you addressing that question to, Councillor Spencer?
The two candidates. Thank you.
Councillor Shadow and Councillor Smith, do you wish to answer that question? Councillor Shadow.
I'm perfectly comfortable in saying that I certainly do not put my name forward as a matter of spite. I just don't do that.
Thank you, Councillor Shadow. Councillor Smith.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I actually did put my name up initially for this position beforehand, just the same as I did now, so nothing to do with spite.
Thank you, councillors. As Councillor Shadow has pointed out as well, the council did decide 2 years ago not to retain any councillor that had served on the SNPP, so that we did start with 2 new councillors rather than retaining any experience. So we have passed form, if you like, in doing what is proposed in the notice of motion tonight. Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak gently against this current motion. Now, I'd first like to say that I'd like to thank the councillors for this opportunity to serve on the Sydney North Planning Panel for the last 2 years. It's been an incredible experience. I've learnt a lot about the planning process. What I've also learnt, though, is that quite often with planning, things aren't as straightforward and as cookie cutter as some people may believe. Sometimes council staff have advocated a position that some other panel members don't agree with, and I've had to fight quite vigorously in defence of the officer's recommendation. There have been other times, though, where there may have been a recommendation which, once I had access to further information and looked at things in a more holistic way, I personally disagreed with council staff. So there is a dilemma there, and there's something that I've learnt from this experience. Now, if Councillors Smith and Councillors Chateau end up on the Sydney North Planning Panel, I do wish that they too can learn a lot from this experience. I can wholeheartedly say that I personally believe I have acted in Ku-ring-gai's best interests, that I've personally acted in a way to preserve Ku-ring-gai's character within the confines of the law, but I think for each representative on the Sydney North Planning Panel, that is going to be a challenge that they will have to face when the time comes. So one thing I don't appreciate is like the approach, the word terminate, and I know that prior to this, in the months leading up, I have approached several councillors saying that if other councillors want, they too can have an opportunity on the Sydney North Planning Panel. And I've said it to quite a number of you, but for some reason the first time I actually found out about this was in a notice of motion that seemed to be relatively hostile. I just wished that someone had approached me and asked for it, and I would have gladly given the position away. But that is mainly why I'm voting against this. But yeah, I do see the position that we're in right now, and I do wish councillors Chateau and Smith the best as they serve on the Sydney North Planning Panel. Things are a lot more tricky than you may be led to believe, but please do fight for the character of Ku-ring-gai. Please fight to protect the interests of our residents. Thank you.
I might just ask the Director of Development and Regulation a little bit about the process, because I have not served on the panel, but I have a recollection that when Council appoints prospective members to the panel, that they actually have to be approved as appropriate members. Is that correct, Director?
Mayor and councillors, there's nothing in the operational procedures that actually requires that. All that is required is for council, once it has nominated or resolved by whatever means they want in terms of their decision, that decision and the details of the new panel members or council panel members be communicated to the Minister for Planning within 14 days.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councillor Spencer.
Thank you. I would like to move an amendment to this point D, that Councillor Smith and Chateau are not paid. Just include the word "not" there. I do recall a year ago, Councillor Smith has suggested that members should not be paid.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? Seconded, Councillor Pettit. Councillor Spencer, do you wish to speak to that amendment?
Well, I don't really have much to say, except that I do recall that Councillor Smith argued enthusiastically against myself and Councillor Nye to be paid a certain fee, and I am asking him to put the money where his mouth is, to say we will not be paid. Thank you.
Councillor Pettit is seconded. Do you wish to speak to that?
Why not, Madam Mayor? Why not indeed? Who'd have thought that this planning panel would elicit such enthusiasm from various councillors to remain on it and to become on it? That's interesting about remuneration. I can see where both councillors are coming from with Councillor Smith. Obviously, if I'm incorrect, is that the position that you took some time ago, that the councillors shouldn't be paid? That will be my question to Councillor Smith.
Councillor Smith.
Madam Mayor, I think this is just getting a little bit ridiculous this evening. I don't feel that there's any reason for me to even answer these sorts of questions that have been put forward. I think that there was a mention of
Councillor Spencer, please be silent while councillors are speaking.
There was mention there by some councillors being spiteful. I believe that's what might actually be happening now, which is quite disappointing.
Thank you.
Councillor Pettit.
Madam Mayor, I don't know whether that was a yes or a no, because I don't care either way. Was that Councillor Smith's position, whether councillors should or shouldn't be paid?
Again, Councillor Pettit, the councillor has answered as he sees fit, and that's up to him to respond accordingly.
No dramas whatsoever, no dramas whatsoever. Like, I can appreciate where Councillor Spencer's coming from with this particular amendment, where we become councillors not necessarily for the remuneration, we do it for the greater good of looking after the residents and to do the best for Ku-ring-gai. And I'm sure regardless of whoever is on the planning panel from the 10 councillors, they will do their best for Ku-ring-gai. So I can see both sides of the coin from Councillor Spencer and Councillor Smith's positions.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't speaking particularly to the amendment I put my light on beforehand, and the comment I wanted to make was merely general.
Well, I'm afraid under meeting
Yeah,
practice.
Exactly, that's what I'm just saying. I think I'm not
No.
in line to speak to this particular amendment.
Thank you. You can put your light on after we deal with this amendment then. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Once again, I will speak briefly against this amendment. I believe it is a very interesting position for councillors who have benefited from the previous 2 years from paid for the extra workload to suddenly say that now the new councillors coming on should not be paid for the increased workload. It seems a bit rich in my eyes, so I won't be supporting this particular amendment.
Councillor Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to speak to the surprise of some people against this motion. I do
Amendment?
believe... What?
An amendment?
To this amendment?
Amendment?
I do believe... Well, personally, in the interest of Ku-ring-gai, I would have happily served for free for 2 years, and I would have happily served an additional year for free. Having said that, I do recognise that we have a pre-established principle or practice where the members of the panel tend to get paid for this kind of service. I also note that the councillor members get paid $500 per determination, whereas if it was an alternate stepping in their place, it would be $1,400. So there is a degree reflected there, an element there to reflect that councillors already get paid in another capacity, and this $500 is actually just an addition on top of just to recognise that there are tens of hours involved in preparing for each determination. I do believe that whoever is on the panel should get paid. Having said that, if I were to remain on the panel, I would gladly do it for free for the benefit of Ku-ring-gai as well. And I do think that is something that maybe we can consider, if not now, then at the next council term, that maybe it shouldn't be a paid position and that maybe the councillors involved should be doing it for the benefit of Ku-ring-gai, regardless of what financial costs are involved. Thank you.
Councillor Kay.
Okay, this is to the General Manager, to the relevant director. Is this really within our jurisdiction to not pay these people for? Is this not something that is determined with other councils and that it is a paid fee?
Director of Development and Regulation.
Mayor and councillors, the operational procedures are not that explicit concerning this question. All they say is councils determine the fees they pay their council members. It doesn't actually say that council may determine to pay their council members. And the suggestion in the past, and this hasn't been updated, but in previous years, there was a circular that came from the Minister of Planning which basically said in the order of $600, and that hasn't changed. There hasn't been a subsequent circular to replace that.
Councillor Shadow.
Madam Mayor, I believe we've had 2 for and 2 against of this amendment.
We have. The General Manager has confirmed that. So I will, thank you, Councillor Clark. I will put that the amendment now be put to the council. All those in favour? This is the amendment. Yes, the amendment. Yes, that is unanimous. Thank you. So I am now putting Councillor Spencer's amendment. All those in favour? Councillors Spencer, Pettit and Kelly. Against? Councillors Nye, Clark, Greenfield, Shadow, Smith, Kay, Anderson. That is lost. We move back to the original motion, which is Councillor Shadow's, and Councillor Kelly can now make his general remark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To my mind, it doesn't matter to me what we're talking about, what committee or whatever. I lived on a farm when I was a young boy, and I learnt to drive when I was 10 years old, and when I was 17 I got a licence. Up to that point I had experience, but it wasn't a qualification. And I imagine that the state government has put a list of qualifications in the parameters of the SNPP for a reason, and it's to ensure that, I imagine, that the people who serve on the SNPP do have the requisite knowledge and qualifications and possibly experience. And I'm not denying that the candidates who've nominated don't have experience. I have really no axe to grind on that at all. But the recommendation on the panel is for qualifications. And, we all bring a wealth of life experience and whatever into the role in council, and sometimes that adds to these experiences on panels and committees and whatever, without necessarily being strictly formal. But there's a reason why these things are put in the guidelines, and I think those guidelines should be respected. At the time of the original nominations, I was impressed with the qualifications of the two candidates at the time, and I voted accordingly. And I think that's following the guidelines that are laid down to help us in this process of nomination and qualification and vetting people for these sorts of roles. And of course I wouldn't nominate myself for this panel because I just don't think I've got the skills or the experience to do it. So I think there's a reason for those guidelines, and they should be adhered to. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? If not, I'll ask Councillor Chatto if she wishes to sum up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to say I was going to ask one question. I noticed that there was
we can't have questions.
Oh, I can't.
Sum up now.
Okay. In which case, I'd just like to put this motion. It's not out of spite. This is simply sharing an opportunity to serve on a panel working with state government appointees as well as others to do the best for Ku-ring-gai and to uphold our planning procedures. And I would be very honoured to do this. I'd be very honoured to have the support of other councillors. And if I can speak for Councillor Smith, I believe he would be also. And although only one of us has to have the expertise, it's not a formal qualification nor is it experience, I think it's a very good opportunity to be able to share among councillors that experience that comes from being on a panel, serving on a panel. So I put this motion to you.
I will put Councillor Chatto's motion. All those in favour? That is Councillors Clark, Greenfield, Chatto, Smith, Anderson. Against? Councillors Nye, Pettit, Spencer, Kelly, Kay. That is equal voting again, and I cast my vote in favour of the motion. That is carried. That's it. Councillors, is there any business without notice subject to clause 9.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice? None. There are no inspections. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 8 p.m.